You'll notice that the pictures are running behind me. Um, in order to coordinate my talk with those pictures, I'd have been here about 2 or 3 hours. So I thought what I'd do is just give you a view of what was going on while I talk about just part of it. The X376 was built in 1975. It was one of 6 that were contracted for by the railroad. 3 were cabooses that had generators. 3 were cabooses that had the solar panels on the roof. And you can always tell a bay window Southern Railroad caboose that has solar panels. We call them yellow bellies. The side of the caboose is yellow around the bay windows. And this was one that had the generator. It was in service. From what I can tell, I've seen a few pictures of it in service. In Tennessee and Kentucky, I can't say mainly, but the pictures I have show those 2 states. When it was taken out of service, it was taken out of service in Powell, Tennessee, which is not a normal place, I would think, but it was donated to a high school in Powell, Tennessee in 1993. It was moved from the tracks into their football stadium. There it sat for a long time, and a football coach wanted that for their mascot. They spray painted it black inside and out, and it sat there all those years. As the coaches changed, the football team and the caboose got wider and bigger, and eventually they weren't even sure why it was there. They hired a new football coach. He came in and said, let's get that thing out of here and let's get some lawn equipment to groom the football field. So that's when I found it. I don't know about this group, but for a long, long time, I wanted a caboose. It was something that I've thought about when I was quite young. Never thought I could do it, but it would be really nice. And about the time I'd forget about this caboose or any dream of it, I would pull into a roadside rest or somewhere along the interstate, and there would be a caboose with a barbershop in it or an ice cream stand. And I would think, they got it there. Surely I might be able to do that. I worked for a big company. They moved me around a lot. There wasn't much chance that I'd get a caboose and then move, so I just didn't get the caboose. When we got transferred to Georgia in 1992, I began to think about it. We moved into Lawrenceville, and within a year, we found a town called Dahlonega, and we knew that we had moved to the wrong town. So we uprooted and we moved up to Dahlonega, and we got a little bit of land, and it had a flat spot. And lo and behold, I had a place for this caboose. Now came the question, how do you do it? And every time I would find a caboose, I don't know if anybody's ever looked, but Ozark Mountain Rail Cars is the internet site if you want to look for a rail car of any kind, and they'll sell anything. They're expensive to move, and they're way beyond anything I could afford, but it sure gave me a dream book to look at. Trains Magazine is another place you can look. And eventually, as I was looking around, I would find a caboose on eBay, if you can believe that. Every time I would look at something, I would talk to somebody about moving it. The cost got so big, I gave up. One day, as I was coming back from lunch, going to work, I happened to see a sign that apparently had been there a long time, didn't mean much to me, but I saw it this time. It said Phoenix Cranes. I thought, I got a couple minutes, let me go in there. So I went in and there was a man sitting in there. I told him that I was thinking about moving a caboose and the problems I had run into. And he said, I can tell you're serious. And I said, I am, and I can tell you're not laughing, is what I told him. He said, well, we take people seriously here. I'm going to write down a name, which he did, and a phone number. He said, this is the man you need to call. He's in Homer. And he is a heavy hauler, independent, has trucks and things that will amaze you, and he can move anything, anywhere in the United States. And I went home that night and called, and he answered the phone. He was in town, told him that the Phoenix Crane guy had told me to call. He said, sounds interesting. I'll tell you what, I'll see you tomorrow night right after supper. And within 24 hours roughly, I had the man that was going to answer all my questions and fulfill a dream standing in my driveway. He looked around. He said, this is doable. You've got a place we can get heavy equipment in, and we can take care of your issues. What I need to do, though, is give you some instructions from the start that you have to follow. Number one, do not get a caboose with a cupola. If you get a caboose with a cupola, you're going to pay freight like you would not imagine. He said it requires lead cars and trail cars. And he said what happens is you get a rate. If you put a pilot car in front, it doubles it. If you put a trailer car behind it, it triples it. He said, don't do it. Get a bay window. I can move a bay window. Second, I'm going to give you a list of states that you can pick from if you find a caboose. And they basically bordered Georgia. He said, all of these I can work with the height requirements and I can get this thing in. I'll tell the guy over at Phoenix Crane that we talked and what I told you. You're on your own now, but take a look, see what you can find, and then get back to me if you need me. So that was very interesting. It gave me a direction I never had before, and it gave me a purpose, and I knew that I didn't know any numbers yet, but I knew if I was going to do it, this is the way and this is the man. So I started looking again, and one evening I turned on the computer, and there was this ad on eBay that was dull, and it was a bay window caboose in Tennessee. I kept thinking, why is this dull? I can't get anything to work, but there's a phone number on there. So I called it. I got a real estate agent in Powell, Tennessee. It was a man. He said, we've sold that. And I said, well, can you tell me about it? Anything at all? He said, well, it's been in the high school stadium. They want to get rid of it. I'm on the booster club. They asked me if I would broker it. I told them I'd do it for nothing. And we put it on eBay, and one of our board members wants to buy it. She said she'll take it, and she'll get back to me. And I quietly just thought to myself a minute and said, look, I'm about to say something that I don't mean to insult anybody, but I want you to remember this. When you get that phone call in about 3 weeks from this lady telling you she doesn't know how to move it, she doesn't know where to put it, she doesn't know how to put it where she wants to move it, and she can't figure out how to get it across the highways. And I'm sorry, I can't buy it. Remember, I told you that. And here's my phone number. I said I would also ask for you to give me the name and phone number of the person from the high school that contacted you. He said, I'll be happy to do that. It was the president of the booster club, and he gave me his phone number. 2 days later, with my grandson, I was standing in the football field of Powell, Tennessee. I just had to see it. And I talked my way in from outside a fence, through a fence with a lawn guy, and I got inside it. I couldn't get in the caboose, but to summarize it, it was the prettiest caboose I ever saw in my life. I just couldn't believe it, you know? I couldn't see, it's like looking at a used car that you want. So I got home and we waited. And one night I got a call from the president of the club. He said, we've been talking about you. And I said, really? He said, yeah. The lady not only called, she used the same terms and phrases and words that you did. He said, we think you really know something, and we would be happy to work with you. I said, if that's telling me it's for sale, I want it, but I have to put a whole budget together. I am not about to make you an offer and find out something else doesn't work. I need a package. If you'll be patient with me, I think I can get this done pretty quick. I got home, from home, I called Donald Snare, the truck driver, told him what was going on, and the next night he and the crane man were in my driveway again. They were looking at things, and they were discussing about the crane and how it would go and around, and I just stood there watching. I thought, this is getting serious here. He said, we need you to go back up there and measure the height, the width, anything you can measure on that caboose, measure it. We need to look at the track that it's sitting on. Give us pictures of that. Take a lot of pictures. And then we're ready to give you a bid, but we need to know the answers to those things. We want to know what it weighs. I got up there and I could find out everything but what it weighed. I have a book that says it weighs 53,000 pounds. I have some people from the railroad telling me it weighs 43,000 pounds or 40,000 pounds or almost any number you can imagine. But I could tell them everything but the weight. They said, okay, we can put a bid together based on what we know. And then my conscience started to get to me. I thought, I'm going to walk around. I live out in the country, but we have neighbors. And I'm going to walk around and talk to my neighbors. And I said this in all honesty. If you don't want that caboose in my yard, tell me now. because I don't want to have this big fight at the county commissioner's office because I brought a caboose in. You gotta tell me what. And they all smiled, said, go for it. We would think it would be a lot of fun, which made me real happy. Then I went over to the planning department of our county, talked to him, and he looked at me with a smile and said, I have no idea what to tell you about a caboose in this county. I don't know that we've ever had one, but I'll find out. And he just said, stay here. He left. The chairman of the board of commissioners came in and he said, what do you want to do? He's my neighbor, by the way. I told him. He said, we consider that a piece of equipment. It's not regulated by any kind of law or statute that we have. Have fun. Cheers. I thought, boy, that was way too easy, but he wouldn't give me anything in writing. He just said that. So now we're getting ready, and I get the quotes back from the people, the crane people and the train and the truck people, and I call up to the people at the school, and I said, look, this is the way it's working out, and I can pay you this for the caboose. And they said, we'll take it, which made me think they probably would have taken anything. But I wish I would have realized that before I said that to them. But I have a stock answer for that question. I got two. I usually get asked it twice. First one is, it's cheaper than a mistress. Okay. So we made the bid, and we're waiting now to find a couple of things out. And I said to the school board, or to the Booster Club president, what I would like from you is a motion and a vote on the sale of this caboose at your Board of Education. I would like a statement certifying that you have ownership without any encumbrances. I want something from your board saying that if somebody comes after me because I own this caboose and you sold it and you shouldn't, you'll make it whole and I don't. I will not surrender that caboose. And they were nice enough to do that. I have the certifications in a notebook here at my house. I was surprised. I almost sounded like a lawyer. But I did that. And now I get a call from Donald Snare who says, what are you going to do about track? I said, oh, that's easy. They'll just pull it up and we'll pull it out and bring it out and put it down and put the caboose on. He said, think about what you just said. We're 4 hours from that. You're going to tear up that track, bring it home, put it down, level it in 4 hours? I don't think so. I said, well, I guess I got to build some track. He said, I've been calling around and I have the name of Lanier Steel Company in Commerce. It's a lady. She owns this scrap dealership and she's been buying all the rail from Southern Railroad that they're pulling and replacing. She's waiting for you. Go over and talk to her. I said, yes, Dad, I'll go do that. So I drove down and talked to her. And the thing about this caboose, and it's almost without exception, there is a magnet in it. When people see it or hear about it, they want to get involved. And it happens over and over and over when I have an issue or something that needs to be done. It seems like there's somebody there all the time. She said, this thing really sounds neat. And I'm going to put a kit together for you. I have 2 rails already set aside, which should be the right weight, 39 feet long. I have enough ties to space them 24 inches on center. I've got the metal plates that go on those, and I've got the spikes ready for you. It's all sitting over there. Now you go tell your truck driver that he needs to come pick them up in the truck he's going to deliver that caboose in and drive it up there and see how it goes on in your yard. So I called Donald Snare and he said, I hate it when they're right. I just hate this. But so he picked it up and came up and he pulled in with his notebook as he brought this stuff. And, there's pictures up here where you see this happen. And now here we go. My son-in-law owns a Bobcat, which is New Holland, I think it's called. He shows up and he starts unloading the truck. And I thought, boy, I got him hooked now. He'd be involved in this a lot. So he unloaded the truck. Donald Snare handed me a list and he said, you got to get this done before we bring it up here. And I said, I'll do it. And I hadn't looked at it yet, but we had to take down 2 75-foot oak trees. We had to take tree stumps out down level with the ground. We had to move a flower bed about 15 feet. He wanted a 15-foot canopy through the trees, so I had to get ladders out and we had to trim this opening so he could get up. I think that was about it, but it was a list and it had to get done. Meanwhile, we're trying to lay track. I have never laid track in my life. One time I was out driving along near Commerce and I saw this work crew out and I stopped and walked across the field. You could see the looks on their face thinking, what is this guy doing? And I asked them how to lay track and they looked at me and said, this is all done by machines. We don't know. We can't help you. And I thought, you're kidding. He said, look, I can tell you what the machine does. I can't tell you why it does it, or I can't tell you the specifics. Okay, so I called the lady at Linear Steel. She said, follow the following rules. They have to be level. They have to be on solid ground. The track has to be, I forget the number now, 4 foot 8 inches on center. And if you follow all that and you affix them to those ties correctly and then put the stones under it correctly, you'll do fine. So you'll see pictures of me with a hand truck laying these ties out. And the trick is you start with the lowest one and you bring all of them down to it. You don't have to dig up a whole bunch of stuff. You just go to that one tie and dig it out and you keep bringing it down till it's level and you go across and you level them. That was amazingly simple. The thing that got me was how a 1,800 pounds steel rail could not be straight. But when you put it down on the ties, they're all over the place. And I thought, I gotta affix them to that ties. How do you do that? And my son-in-law said, you start at the beginning. So we put 2 of the plates down on the ties, and then we used DeWalt. We wore out DeWalt drills and decking screws, and we affixed those plates, and then we took the first rail and laid it down. Had it about 3 people holding it, and we affixed it with the spike, and then we did the other one next to it. And the way we kept the gauge is we made a template, and we put it between the rails, and we used to come along to tighten it. And once you get the first one, the second one is just minutely easier. By the time you're about 3/4 of the way down, those rails are straight. It was unbelievable. It brought them under control. We just finished it off. One of the funny things that happened was they gave me the honor of driving the first spike. And he said, here, just, give me this big sledgehammer. He said, how hard can this be? 40 minutes later. My head and my arms were ringing from hitting the rail and not the spike. And I was about halfway in. And he took over and finished it. We were all laughing. My grandson, who was with us, pulls out this small sledgehammer and gets him started and then put him in about 4 swings. Said, you got a job, son. And he did a lot for us. This was really a family thing. But we got the rails in. We're all set. Now, this was 2006, late in the year, going into 2007. How many people can remember what the weather was doing in that time period, if you can, here in this part of the country? It was called a drought. Lake Lanier was at the lowest point in its history. It was perfect to bring in a caboose into a yard. Nothing would sink. We were all excited. I called up the school and said, we're ready to move on this. He said, yeah, we're thinking about next summer. And I said, I'm not thinking about next summer. I'm thinking about next week. He said, no, we can't use that parking lot. We have got to wait till the school's out. And I thought for a minute and said, well, you have school work days or teacher work days? He said, yeah. I said, give me one. And he said, I think we can do that. Never thought about it. So in a month and a half, we had scheduled the pickup of this caboose. Now, the thing about the crane companies is, and this man at Phoenix Crane told me, they'll bill you a base rate. He said, you're neighbors to us. We'll give you a rate. Expect an out-of-town crane company to charge you double. That's the way we do it. So just be aware that they're going to, and they were a lot more money. They were ready. We're ready. Everything's ready to go. My son-in-law, my grandson, and I go up to Powell, Tennessee in the rain. It starts to rain as we're driving up there. We check into a Holiday Inn and we go to bed. About 4:30, the phone's ringing. I pick it up, and he said, John, this is Bill from Barnhart Crane. Yeah, he said, we're not moving to Caboose today. And I said, I beg your pardon? He said, we can't get in there with that rain. I said, did you know that yesterday? He said, we've been talking about that. I said, well, I've got a truck sitting here I'm paying for. How's this going to work? He said, look, we're going to make you a deal. Now, as far as I can tell, this is the first case of ransomware you're going to hear about. He said, here's what we're going to do for you. You go over right now and measure the edge of the blacktop to the caboose. You call us back with that distance. Once we have that distance, we can calculate what kind of crane we need for the reach. We'll let you know. So we measured, called him. He said, we have a crane here to lift that caboose. It's big. He said, we are prepared to come over there and lift that and put it on that truck for the same price we were going to charge you for the other crane. But if we can't lift it because it weighs too much, you owe us 8 hours for that crane at the high rate. What the heck? I said, bring it on. What am I going to do? We measured, and they had it, and now they said it'd be about an hour and 20 minutes before we're there. We're sitting at the school waiting. The truck hasn't come. He was supposed to have been at the school. Don't know where he is. He hasn't called. I figured we got time. Semi pulls in, full of plates and weights and stuff. It says Barnhart Crane. Flatbed. A second one pulls in, and then a third one. This is a big crane. Crew cab truck pulls in, and a bunch of guys get out. And I'm thinking, I wonder what the rate per hour on this thing is at the high rate. And this crane pulls in, and I don't know if you've seen those pictures yet, but it was a big crane. They parked it. And I'm thinking in myself, what kind of weight are they looking for, you know? And he said, if it weighs 43,000 pounds or more, we're not lifting it. Now, you heard the numbers I threw out before. So I didn't know it, but cranes have a scale on them. So they're working to hook up this caboose real fast because it's raining. And Donald Snare shows up, and he's backing the truck in, and he's calling out the weight, 42,000 pounds. And I'm thinking, get out your wallet. At about 42.5, it lifted. And boy, take a breath. And it didn't take 20 seconds to get it over by the truck. Another 10 minutes, and it was sitting down on the truck. I thought nothing else could possibly go wrong here. I mean, we've gone through all this twice. I've been tested, paid the ransom, and we're okay. And nobody's talking to me. The crane people want to get out of there. It's raining. Donald's working on the truck. He doesn't have time for me. I'm just waiting. And he's getting it just about done. The crane people are all leaving. And he walks over and said, John, we have a big problem. I said, what kind of problem is that? He said, the DOT will not give me a permit to come in by the interstate. They wanted me to come in through the back roads. So I came in that way. That's why I was late. I can make it in, but when I extend the trailer to add the extra axles and we put the weight on it, I cannot go home that way. What are you going to do? He said, well, he had a radio phone they give him. He said, I'm waiting on him. He's talking to somebody else, and this guy, Bob, comes on. What's up? And he said, look, I can't go out that way. You got to go out that way. I need to go out straight to the interstate. You can't do that, Donald. He said, well, look, you don't understand. He said, no, you don't understand. You're not going out that way. And there's this silence, and I'm thinking, what are we going to do now? He says to the DOT guy, let me go look. He said, Donald, I'll tell you what's going on. There's a railroad grade there that you've got to cross that takes a right angle turn up 3 feet, down 3 feet, and another right angle turn. You cannot pull that caboose over that. It won't work. He said, would you let me go look? He said, you can look all you want. So he said, drive me over there. And I did. I thought he was the horse whisperer. He was walking back and forth, throwing stones around on that track. He said, I can do this. And we get back in, drive over. He said, Bob, permit me, I'll do it. He said, Donald, we can't. He said, Bob, you need to permit me. He said, Donald, we've known each other a long time. if you get that truck stuck on that grade cross, it's your truck, it's your license, and it's your ass. Donald said, that's no problem. Okay, this big problem has now turned into something else. So Donald, we're getting in the truck, and he said, get on over there, get in the middle. I'm going to come over here. And I said, what are we doing, Donald? He said, well, you're going to direct traffic. Now, this is like Jesse Jewell Parkway, 3 lanes both directions, you know. I'm thinking, I'm going to direct traffic. So I'm there. He pulls the truck over to the side. He had something called a drop deck trailer. Never heard of it. Airbags under it. He started buttons in that cab, and the base of that trailer and the caboose came up to about my shoulders. I thought, that looks a little top heavy, you know. He said, now you do what I do on the other side. And he just stepped out of that cab and did this, and then this. He got all 3 lanes stopped. He pointed at everybody and said, wait for the truck. Go do that. So now I'm on the other side, and believe it or not, if you act like you know what you're doing, people will stop. And I said the same thing. You guys wait till the truck's over. And in an instant, he was up and over that at a 45-degree angle, pulled over to the side, and he's lowering the trailer already. And I thought, boy, wait till I talk to him. And he's gone. Well, all right, I better get home. And we had made plans with him that I could drive near him and take some pictures, and then I could get ahead of him and get on an overpass, take pictures. We had this all planned out. Well, we get up to the first overpass. I can't find him. We waited there an hour. No truck, no caboose. He couldn't have possibly beat us. You know, we were going around. So we ended up in Dalton. Still haven't seen him. So I said, well, let's get something to eat at Waffle House. We can watch the freeway from here. We sit down, the phone rings, it's Donald. He says, where are you? I said, I'm at Waffle House in Dalton. He said, well, I'm in your driveway. I said, how is the weather over there? He said, it's raining. I said, well, I'll be right there. We had to drive a ways to get to Dalton from Dahlonega, but we got over there. And what had happened is he had pulled into the first way station, which he's required to do. And everybody in the way station wanted to look inside the caboose. So they ordered it back around, and they had to park it down there while everybody had their look. And he said to about 45 minutes. And after that, I was free to go. So we got it home, and this is the drought, remember. It rained for a month. He left the trailer on a little gravel drive we had there outside the main drive. And I kept thinking, he's going to want that trailer. It's been a month. And one night he called and said, John, I got to get that trailer. I said, how are we going to do this? He said, I've already got a call into the Phoenix crane. We'll figure it out, but we're coming. Within 2 days, the crane guy came up and said, you're not going to like to hear this, but we've got to give him this trailer, but we're not going to get out of your yard. I mean, it's a 100,000-pound crane. It's going to get stuck. I said, what do we do? He said, well, I'm not sure, but we have a supplemental truck that brings extra parts. We'll load it down and we'll hook a hook on it with a cable, and we'll try to pull the crane and see if we can get it straightened out, and we'll go from there. Okay. He said, but I need the crane. And if we can't move it, you're going to be running it 8 hours a day until we get it out of there. I thought, this is the 3rd ransomware in a row. But this is what you're dealing with. And he had other business. And I said, well, you're saying you think you can do it. Let's go. And we had to wait for a few minutes for him to get up there. And he tries to come in frontwards. He doesn't like it. He turns around. He's backing this crane in, now backwards into my yard. Gets it over by the tracks, turns the wheels, and it's dead. It's right down to the axles in the mud. You bring in the flatbed truck, it's down to the axles. Now they're throwing stones and gravel and anything they can think of to get in there. It's not going anywhere. He said, well, you're going to run a tow truck. I said, I am? He said, yeah, I'm calling for a tow truck. Okay. And he said, it'll be up here in about 45 minutes. So I got to think about that for 45 minutes. I had this vision of a 18-wheeler type tow truck, that's 90 feet long or something. That's what came was this stubby little 4-wheel drive thing that didn't look like it could pull anything. And the guy pulls it in and he backs it up and he's working the crane over towards the supplemental truck. And Donald is now pulling the caboose in. Well, when we took out the oak trees, it allowed him to move farther over in the yard by about 12 feet. What he didn't anticipate was there's a gully and there's an incline. He stops and you can see that caboose going over, just like that. The guy with the tow truck anticipated that. He ran over and put his hook on that caboose and hit a button and it stopped it. He brought it back up. And I thought, boy, that tow truck just paid for itself, I'll tell you what. And I'm back there looking at this truck holding up the caboose, these two things stuck in my yard, this stubby little four-wheel drive thing, and thought, wonder what that guy in that insurance ad would say. We've seen a thing or two. I bet he never saw that. I'll tell you what, I bet he never saw that. Holy cow. But what I didn't know was behind that caboose, they were shoring it up. When they unhooked it, I thought it was going to go over. It didn't move. He got the supplemental truck out, and then he had these spades that came up and out of the back and went into the ground. They were probably 8 feet long. He looked at me and said, here's what's going to happen. We're going to start pulling that crane, and it's going to start pulling on those spades, and they're going to set in your yard. The front wheels of this are going to come up to about your eyes. As soon as they hit that, they'll start to move that crane. That's exactly what happened. The winch was powerful enough. Those spades held that truck, and he brought that crane into the right place. So now they're getting ready. They're getting to put this caboose on my track, and there's 3 boys and the father, and they're working on it, getting it ready, and they hook on. But now the caboose isn't quite level, and instead of coming up like this, it's coming up like this. Now, has anybody here ever tried to put a model rail car on a track that isn't straight? I'm thinking, this is going to be real interesting when they get it over on that track. And sure enough, they got it down. Everything was on rail except one wheel, which right in the middle. He said to me, here's your choice. We can pick it up, put it in the yard, straighten up this carriage, put it back, but we might not be able to lift it. Or we can just let the weight down and see what happens. I said, I'm the guy that put that rail in. I have no idea what's going to happen other than get everybody out of the way. Because if it goes flying, I don't want it, and everybody moved. They let it down, and with this huge thump, it went into place. And they allowed me to do the ceremonial wheel chalk, approved by OSHA. We put it in. And then just like up in north of Knoxville, they started picking up real quick. Everybody wanted to go home, and it was pretty much over, and I was breathing a sigh of relief. And to me, the tow truck driver was everything, and he was really, really good. He's getting ready to leave. I'm going down. We had 50 people from our neighborhood there with lawn chairs watching this. My neighbor, who's a motorcycle freak, showed up with this little itty bitty, it looked like the Shriners were there, running around that little thing. I thought, I had people on the roof with cameras. It was unreal. But they're all leaving now, and I'm down by the road, and I'm feeling pretty good. And they're gone, and I'm waving, and I turn around, and I looked up at that caboose, and I don't know the way to describe the feeling. It wasn't what I expected. It was, what the hell do I do now? All these years I've been working on this, and this is the point where I work to. I never thought about after. I knew what I kind of wanted, but I didn't know where to start. I had no clue. And I'm walking up the driveway thinking, well, if a guy can figure out how to get a caboose into his yard, he should be able to figure out how to fix it up, I guess. And that's where we started. I waited a few days. We'd go out and look at it and come back out. It was so dirty inside, you have to take a shower after you walked out of that thing. It was so bad. And I thought about it. Got my son-in-law, who I trust a lot, over. He's a commercial roofer. And he said, John, you got to start with the roof leaks or the window leaks, but you got to get the leakage stopped ruining the floor. So we went to a window and backed out the screws. I don't know what they call those fasteners, but took a crowbar, pulled the window out. And that was all leaking, but it was acrylic and it was scratched so you couldn't see in. And we needed glass, something that was going to be nice. So I saw a glass company down in Gainesville, and I stopped in there with this thing and showed it to him. Excuse me. And he said, what is this? And I said, well, it's from a caboose. And he went, a caboose? I thought, here we go. his wife was sitting there. She did the book. She said, I'm going to call you the Choo-Choo Man. And I became known to her as the Choo-Choo Man. And he said, look, we'll be happy to do this. Give it to me. And he said, just come back in a couple of days. We'll look at it. I came back, and what he handed me was that window frame with a glass piece in it that was made with auto glass permeated with gas. It was wonderful. And it was lightly tinted. It was beautiful. And I said, this is really nice. I'd like to ask you a favor, though. I want to have a hand in just about everything that goes on here. If you can show me how to do that frame, you can make the glass and I'll put them in and I'll give you the measurements. He said, that's fine. So we did the rest of the windows ourselves and got them in. There's 2 portholes, if you'll notice, on that Caboose. They're 3 inches thick and they're plastic. I said, I got to have 2 of those. You can't see out of them either. He said, now we don't make those, but we can get the plastic. They were $100 a piece. When he billed me for the windows, he billed me $28. I said, are you sure? He said, listen, we have a part of this Caboose now. And I thought, so we did a canvas print of that Caboose and put windows by Lanier Auto Glass. And we put it in his reception area. It's still there. It's still there. They know me when I walk in. And those windows 20 years or 10 years later, whatever it's been, are fine. And that went well. My son-in-law did the roof. He knew what to do and how to do it, and he took care of that very quickly. Then it was a matter of maybe we need to get all of the stuff out of here. And you'll see in these pictures, everything's metal, everything's heavy, and everything's in with pop rivets about that diameter. So as I mentioned earlier about the drills, we went and got the best hammer drills you can buy from DeWalt, and those were the big battery kind. And then we got the bits from Home Depot. I forget what they cost, but they're titanium. We hit that first pop rivet with that titanium bit, and it was dull in a second. It didn't even phase it. It didn't even take the paint off the end of it. Jeez, it was bad. And we had to kind of reconvene. And we came up with the idea of using a cutting blade on our grinder. So we started cutting them. And we'd yank that whatever piece of equipment was off. And then we would take a big punch with a small sledge and we pushed them through inside. And then we used the titanium bit to clean it out. So we didn't waste the bit. And everything we did, we had to do that with. There were probably 200 at least to get all that equipment out. Most of the equipment went out the door. Some things did not, which meant they were assembled or welded once it was in place. The doors are not real wide on a Caboose, and the porch, if that's what you call it, is not real deep. So when you think about everything you see that's in this Caboose, it had to go through those doors, and you'll see some big stuff. You get creative. So we had to cut up some things to get it out. It was all donated to the Heart of Dixie Museum over in, I think that's Calera, Alabama. I don't know if anybody's been over there, but they've got the X201 there. I think that's what it is, 201. And the owner of that is Jeremy Cole. And Jeremy Cole found me on the internet and started coming by the house to give me advice because he had been working with that. And if I'm not mistaken, he's director of railroad operations for Southern Company. He's a really nice guy. He was giving me counseling as we were working. He said, if you're going to make this into a man cave, remember first it's a Caboose. It's a man cave second. Don't go in there with knotty pine and just cover it all up. Remember it's a Caboose. It's got metal walls. It's got conduit on the outside of the wall. And it will always look like a Caboose if you respect that, and you'll like it better. And he's right. He was absolutely right. We began to take things out. The only thing we left in it were the 2, what I call closets, the 2 big cabinets that were tall. And those were so hooked into the floor, I wasn't sure what to do. We got everything out, then we looked at the floor, and the floor is roughly 3 inches thick. It's handmade tongue and groove wood, 3 pieces of wood. It was beautiful, but the dry rot was terrible. And we were going to tear it all out, and as I looked at that, I thought, that's not only a big job, it's expensive. So what we did instead was we took a marker and we marked where the dry rot was. And then we got out a ruler of all things. And we began to draw squares and rectangles wherever there was a bad spot. And we cut out dry-rotted pieces. Then we glued 3 pieces of 3/4-inch plywood together, put that down as a template, and we cut it. And we drop it in the hole. It was like a big jigsaw puzzle. And we got that done. It took a while, but we got it done. And then we put 3/4-inch plywood over the whole thing. And then eventually we got distressed hardwood floors for it. And we left each end original floor. So when you open the door, there's a small step, but you can see what the floor was there. It wasn't badly rotted. And we got that done. And then it was a matter of, you want a bathroom? Yeah. Then how do you put a bathroom in? And everything was metal. I got some 4x8s. We made an enclosure with a door and painted it gray. Eventually, put metal edges on it, and it looks metal, but it's wood. It's the only thing in it that's wood. The stove was gorgeous. It was all broken. Everything had a crack in it, just about. It was a 1902 estate stove. It was really nice in its original state. I found one on eBay that was broken, and I talked to the guy on the phone, and he shipped it to me, and the two made one stove. It actually worked. I had it in the driveway. I think I've got some pictures here of that. I fired that thing up in the driveway. The flames were coming out of the top of that smokestack about 4 feet. It was really neat. Had to take it apart, put it back in. And then I realized I've got all this wood. So I decided we better get a hearth. I don't even know what a hearth is, but I knew I needed to get a hearth. And we went down to Graves Fireplaces in Cumming. I don't know if anybody's familiar with them. But I went in, and when I said Caboose, the magic happened. The wife says, "Honey, how about that one upstairs?" He said, "Well, I don't." And she said, "He's going to paint it gray, and that's going to match." Okay, they bring down this hearth. It was gorgeous. I don't know what the people paid for it originally. He said they bought it, put it in the house, and they hated it, and we took it back out. It's all paid for. He said, "Give me $100 and it's yours." So we brought that in and put it in. And I'll speed this up a little bit here, but we did things like that as we went through. An interesting find, when we emptied the coal bin, there was a letter underneath all that coal from a post office box in New Orleans to a post office box, I think it was Huntsville, Alabama. And there was a letter in it. So we opened it up, and it was a letter to a father who wasn't home on Father's Day. How much this little girl loved her father. I thought, boy, I'd sure like to find out who this belongs to. I'll return it to him. So I managed to get over with my friend at the post office. And I said, "Look, I don't need to know names, but can you look up a post office box?" "Sure." I said, "Well, this one in Huntsville, could you look it up?" He said, "That's the state penitentiary." So we didn't return the letter. But the question is, how did that get in there? I mean, how did that happen? We found a newspaper used for insulation. It was from 1980. And I thought, I'll frame that. And we had it sitting back behind me, and we were grinding a bolt off when a spark hit it. It went up in smoke. So we lost that. We have the final inspection, 1993, in Powell, Tennessee. That was in a little slot. The people that stop are almost as interesting as that Caboose. I had an engineer from the Grand Trunk Railroad. I didn't even know there was such a thing, but apparently it was quite a railroad. And he came in, he said, "I just want to sit in it." So we sat down, and he started telling me stories about how he'd be highballing down the road, and the conductor in the Caboose hated him going that fast, and he would start letting air out on the air brake and slow him down. And he said, I'm trying to make time, and I can't figure out why. And then I find out that this conductor's been doing that to me. He said, "Guess what we do? We come to a quick stop in the yard." He said, "By the time that guy picks himself up, we're even." And I've had conductors telling me stories about engineers and how they won't behave and they won't listen. I've never had both of them in there together, but it's been a very interesting time. We've opened this Caboose up to just about anybody that wants to come see it. If somebody stops by and I have time, I'll take them in. The Lumpkin County Sheriff's Department has named it a geopoint. They have 12 geo points. If you're a new deputy, you have to learn where these things are. Because when somebody calls 911, they may not know their road number, they may not know where they are, but they remember a caboose. And we can find them. The one I'm not sure of, but I believe it's true. We have the mountain phase of the Army Ranger training up our way. And from time to time, we get helicopters over the house. They turn on that caboose. You can see them come in and turn. It's got to be a visual, I would assume. I don't know that for sure. I did share one night with a guy that was going to our church who was a sergeant over at that base. I said, when you guys fly over real low, I wave and nobody ever waves back. He said, oh. And I said, well, I mean, are you in Army mode and you're not allowed to recognize that you're not? And he said, no, we'd wave back. I said, well, you're not. And he was at our house when I told him. He said, well, where are we anyway? And I told him. 2 nights later, we're in the house and there's this ruckus. And I mean a ruckus. We go running out and there's a helicopter down on deck pulling up the shingles. He's in the door waving at. That was his answer. But it is somewhat renowned now. And I don't normally do this. There's a lot of people here, but we're having an open house on the 14th of August for the railroad group. Anybody here that wants to come is more than welcome to come. And it'll be during the day, and I don't know how we would. I need to know a head count, so somehow I need to know. We've got some cards here with my internet address, and I don't say this lightly. We've had a lot of people. When we had the car club there, we had 40 muscle cars in my front yard. People were stopping; they thought it was a car show, and they were all in looking at the caboose. Now, are there any questions? I did this real quick. I didn't have a full amount of time to give you everything, but there are. We've written a book. Thank the Lord for Emil Decker. He's the guy that does our monthly gazette for the Garden Railroad. Dahlonega. Emil is the guy that does he's always looking for stories. He heard about this and he said, do you have it written down? I said, yes. And I gave him what I had. And he said, you have pictures? I said, yes. And I gave him what I had. And he began to take my writings and put them into an 8-part serial and publish it in the Gazette. And he had a knack of cutting off just when the guy says, John, we got a big problem. And then you got to wait till next month to find out what the problem was. And people would call and say, what's the problem? I said, you're in Evil's hands. I can't tell you. You're going to have to ask him. And he would say, wait till next month. But it was 8 sections. There's a man I meet every morning with a bunch of others. We have coffee up there at Starbucks. And he said, this is a compelling story. And this is from a guy that never says anything. He said, this is a really good one. Can you give me the pieces on jump drive? I'll put them together into one story. And he did that. And now I have a gentleman that wants to publish it as a book. I wrote it, but I sure didn't assemble it. And boy, without those 2 men, nothing would have happened. It is hard to believe, but I'll just say this. What I'm hearing is it's a great story about a caboose, but it could be a story about anything. It's all about setting goals and staying with it to get the goals accomplished and how that helps you in your life. It is, I hope, a compelling story. I think that's what we're going to find. The cover of the book is down here on this sheet, and we're on the second proof right now, and we got probably 2 more to go, I guess, and then it'll come out. It'll be on Amazon. It'll be on barnesandnoble.com, and I want to try to hit these train shows and set up a little booth if I can. Get that done. Trying to think of any. Ed, you know Robert West? He came up and gave me well, I had to pay for it, but he did a oil painting of that caboose. It's the first caboose he's ever done. But he fell in love with it, as everybody seems to. And I have the Robert West Memorial Bridge on my outside layout, which is, by the way, what I did during the pandemic. I put in a railroad in the backyard. Didn't even have to wear a mask. Any questions? Yeah. Our plan is to be there And our gentleman here is going to help me with that. There are some take homes here from the publishing of that book to give you an idea what it's going to look like and so on. Oh, it should be. Yep, he's giving me a thumbs up. There are pictures here that match a lot of up here and then more. For the technical guys, I have the original blueprints from the Southern Railroad Historical Society, if anybody's interested in looking at that. I was real proud to get those, and they stay in the caboose. You'll see I also have a book of the 7,500 privately owned cabooses in the United States. If you happen to have one you might want to look up, you can look in those books. Anything else? Anything at all? Thank you.
Thank you. For the grandchildren. So anyway, our next meeting is going to be at Holy Innocents Church, and we're going to have a virtual clinician, which means we're going to be putting it up on the screen, but she's going to be in Colorado, and she's going to show us what the model railroad museum is all about. And Walt has seen her, and he said that she's an excellent speaker. So I look forward to that. I've already confirmed it. I know she's in contact with Perry, so we can get all the logistics done. So anyway, it's supposed to be absolutely beautiful. Okay, so does anybody have any questions for the Piedmont Division before we say goodnight? Okay, well, I hope to see your smiling faces next time. Ready.